Today on In Focus, with award-winning host Yesenia Taveras. Right now, online, is special guest United Way of Delaware's President and CEO, Michelle Taylor, on WYTN 22. Hello, welcome to In Focus. I'm your host, Yesenia Taveras. Joining us today is the President and CEO of United Way of Delaware, Michelle Taylor. Michelle has been serving Delaware's communities through her work at United Way for 20 years. She leads the organization's focus on early education, college and career readiness, and financial stability. She joins us today to share with us her deep passion in public service and to provide information on all the things United Way of Delaware continues to do during the COVID-19 pandemic. She joins us now. Welcome to the show.
Hey, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, our pleasure. It's such an exciting moment. I know we wanted to get you on In Focus prior to the pandemic, but timing is all well here because you're still doing phenomenal things at United Way. So welcome.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So talk to us a little bit about your background first, Michelle. I like to do on this show a little bit of in detail in regards to who the person is behind the title. So many times, often in Delaware, we see each other in the community, but we're so focused on our roles and what we're doing at that moment that we really don't take time to learn about the individual. So before we get into all things United Way, talk to us a little bit about Michelle Taylor.
Let's see, Michelle Taylor at the core of who I am. I start with always right. I am a woman of God. I am married, have been married to my high school sweetheart. So I've been married for over 33 years. Have 3 amazing kids, a great daughter-in-law, and 3 beautiful granddaughters. And so, at the heart of when family is important to me, people are important to me. And I have the amazing ability. I tell people all the time, when you find something that you love doing, you never have to work a day in your life. I really have had the good fortune to work for 3 nonprofit organizations over my career that are all mission driven, have an impact in the community, trying to change lives. And I've got to be a part of that.
And Michelle, you are a graduate of HBCU, Morgan State University. Talk to us a little bit about that. The city of Wilmington is really big on recruiting students here in Delaware to attend a historically Black college and university, and you are a product one. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't say anything without saying, right, we graduated from the same HBCU. Got to do a shout out for Morgan State University.
Yes.
And I, too, am a huge advocate of HBCUs. I think that they are the place, right? And I talk about it for myself, that it was a place really that I got to truly to be exposed to, rich heritage, met amazing friends that are lifetime friends, right? That we're still connected to. My husband and I went to the same HBCU. My daughter followed in our footsteps and also is a graduate from Morgan State University. But really, it provided the foundation. I tell people all the time, it created that safe space for me to grow and learn and to provide, I think, this environment that opened my doors and my eyes around things that, quite honestly, that I didn't have exposure to when I was coming up, right? And so, I not just getting behind them, but, I'm still a part of the Morgan State alumni. I am chairing our education committee. I'm focused on trying to get more Delawareans, anyone who's listening out there, students, to be able to go to Morgan, but also to graduate from Morgan, and then working with the alumni to help young people create these networks, right? That, a lot of times it is about who you know, how we're connected. And so how can we, as Morganites here in Delaware, help to be a better bridge to our young leaders as they graduate into the workforce, into the community, into whatever their next step and phase is.
And here we are, a fine product of bridging that connection as Morganites. Talk to us a little bit about your love for public service and how did you find United Way of Delaware, or how did United Way of Delaware find you?
Yeah, I just shared this story on Saturday. I was kind of reflecting on telling a story to the younger me. I stumbled into United Way of Delaware. I'd had maybe 15 years experience in nonprofits. My background really is accounting. So I graduated with Morgan with an accounting degree. I went in as graduated, became a treasury manager, and then a CFO. But they were all in healthcare industries. And so after 15 years, I realized that maybe someone might box me in to saying I could only do nonprofit, I could only do healthcare. And, I was at a crossroad, and these were the good days. You might not remember them. You're a little younger than me, when MBNA was here, and a lot of my friends, right, and families worked for MBNA, went into the banking industry. And as a mentor, coach me, felt like, that I was kind of called to lead and to serve. And there's nothing wrong with staying in the nonprofit sector, that they needed, the sector as a whole needs effective leadership. And so I just started looking, and it just so happened that United Way had a job for a chief financial officer. And so this allowed me to be able to be exposed to a much larger nonprofit sector. It took me out of just the healthcare sector. It exposed my network. I had, a CFO works on the back end of the business. I had no idea that it would lead to me becoming a chief operating officer and ultimately a CEO. So it took me from behind the scenes to in front of the scenes as part of my journey.
And talk to us about if there was any fear in regards to going into the nonprofit organization. Sometimes there's a stigma out there because their funding is very different from corporate America, that the dynamics are very different. So stepping into a nonprofit and working for one could be a little bit risky for some, but others think differently. They think it's an opportunity to grow and make change in our community. Talk to us about your experience in working for nonprofits and how you can encourage others to do the same.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So when I started a nonprofit, working for a healthcare nonprofit, the majority of your revenue really comes from third-party payers, which was insurance. So it wasn't much risk associated with that half of my career. And when I joined United Way, these were the good years. Like, in the 2000s, the economy was booming. And so, for my first 7 years, part of my job was even trying to keep up with the growth. And so I don't think people necessarily shied away from nonprofits. And what I've seen actually is just the opposite over times, as the community has experienced mergers, acquisitions, downsizing. A lot of people from the for-profit community, then decide that they want to shift careers and they want to do something really meaningful. And so, a lot of my colleagues that I work with now, traditionally, you were this nonprofit professional, you were in nonprofits, you stayed in nonprofits, and it was mainly but now it really is a blend of people who have shifted from for-profit, who have now found a place that they are connected to purpose and mission, and they're giving back in a nonprofit community.
We love purpose and mission here at In Focus. That is what it's all about. Talk to us about the purpose and mission of United Way. What role does it play in our community here in Delaware?
So, United Way's mission is to maximize the community's resources to improve the lives of Delawareans. But I like to say overall, we're really trying to help people realize their full potential, regardless of zip code. And so we do that by focusing on 3 key areas: increasing the number of kids that can read by the end of 3rd grade, in preparing more young people to be tomorrow's workforce, and then helping more families be financially stable and empowered. Really, it's about how do we help to change a trajectory for people so that they can go straight into a livable wage job? How do we ensure that everyone, kids and adults, have equal access and opportunity? And how do we make sure that more people in our community are prepared to also obtain and acquire wealth creation and assets? And so, a lot of times we look upstream, but it's really what are the decisions that we make downstream that will drive us there. And also as a community, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, in a few minutes, there are always systemic or institutional barriers that can keep back a group of people. Most of the time, brown and Black individuals, there's a huge disparities, or those that are in poverty. And so we are fighting on behalf of individuals in our community to give them a better opportunity to ensure, right, that the pathway they have really leads to financial independence and empowerment.
And there's that power word, we. Talk to us about who the we is. You work with businesses and government at the same level in regards to getting everyone involved. Talk to us about these partnerships and how do you work with businesses and the government here in Delaware?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So, for our work, there's virtually little that we do alone because the problems are too big and too large and too complex to do that. So the we for us is we work with hundreds of partners that are working alongside of us, around the things that we just talked about, right? So if we're going to put a stake in the ground, for example, to try to get more kids to read by the end of third grade, what we're trying to do really is to not replicate, but how do we integrate and advance and kind of leverage our powers together? How can the sum of what we do become greater than the parts? And so we're working with any partners that are working in the same space. So like we may work with the libraries, our amazing partners, or like Latin American Community Center and West End Neighborhood House and Christina Carter Arts Center and, the Girl Scouts and Girls Inc. and Boys and Girls Clubs. All of the organizations, we're working together to try to meet both an immediate need, but also trying to work together to be able to say, how do we change the system from a systemic level? And from a government perspective, the state is an amazing partner for us. The city is and the county is. I want to be able to say that. But we really work in partnership and in tandem with DSS and DHSS on a lot of our stuff with the Department of Education, that I think government recognizes that they can't do it alone, and that they also need nonprofits, they need philanthropy. And so as a community, right, that generally, that's why there's so many partnerships and networks and alliances and coalitions, groups of people alike coming together to try to solve for an issue.
And I appreciate you mentioning just some of the many organizations here in Delaware that you partner with in regards to making these goals achievable. And one of those goals of yours at United Way of Delaware, I should say, the whole organization, is to make sure that every child here in Delaware is reading at grade level. Talk to us a little bit about why that's so important, a huge passion of yours, and then talk to us about Get Delaware's reading program.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm really passionate about the Read by Third Grade, and that's because the research speaks for itself. It clearly indicates that third grade reading, that milestone, is the best indicator for where kids will finish, right? And so if we know how important that third grade reading is, there's been longitudinal studies that have indicated, if you fast forward to kids who might have dropped out later in high school, if you look at even some of the men or women who are incarcerated, and you backtrack to where they were, you'll see that most of them might have been behind 2 grades, got left back, behind 2 grades. Their reading is still maybe at a much lower reading score. So maybe somewhere between the 4th, 5th, 6th grade reading level. And so if our community can't read, and particularly with the Common Core, they can't do math. And if they can't read and can't do math, then how will they be prepared to be the workforce that the community needs? And what options does that present for them? And so understanding that, and I'm passionate about it because there is such a disparity between brown and Black kids and kids with means. And so if you just take the city of Wilmington, for example, we know that 80% of the kids in the city of Wilmington are not reading on grade level by the end of third grade. 80%. So that means flip it. Only 20% of kids are reading on grade level by the end of third grade, or 8-year-olds. And so I keep saying, I think that's a tsunami. I think it's a fire, like it's a forest. People should be seen as a hurricane. We are way too silent about it. And not that there's not groups that's working on it, but you don't really hear about it, right? And I've been beating on this drum, myself included, and an advocate for third grade reading, I feel like now for, the last 15 years, maybe a little more. And the reality is, it still hasn't made the progress. It's been incremental. Mm-hmm. And so I think as a community, when we think of, we're not a big state. The city isn't a big city in the, in the scheme of things, right, of communities that are around us, that I think there needs to be more public will, that, we put a stake in the ground that says we want better, we want better for our kids. I really feel like if it was where my kids went, or your kids, or the kids that sit around a lot of the tables, the outcomes would be different, which then brings equity into the equation, right? And so I continue to beat on this drum, continue to be a voice around it, because it's extremely important to not just where our kids are or need to be. I think it's a strong indicator that will determine where our kids finish.
And Get Delaware Reading is such a fitting name. During this COVID-19 pandemic, you actually set the example. You brought, I believe it was your granddaughter to the table, and you did some reading virtually online for some community members. Talk to us about that experience.
Yeah, so that is something. So for Get Delaware Reading, so we're a part of Delaware as a part of the campaign for grade level reading, and we renamed it Get Delaware Reading for Delaware. And then this is about Delaware, and it's about the whole state. I know sometimes people think, everything that we do is about Newcastle County or Wilmington, but it is about Delaware. And the campaign, just so you know, that's a good example of, we joined forces with 300 cities around the country who are all working on trying to be able to change the outcome on behalf of kids. And how do we make sure that we're implementing best practices? How do we make sure, right, that we have the right strategies that we're deploying in place? And so one of the things that we have, and particularly during the COVID, the virtual reading angels that we did. So I had an opportunity to read with my granddaughter. She is 8, and she picked the book out herself. And she is an amazing reader. She's a good example. She loves reading books. She's already on chapter books. If we go out, she's always grabbing a book. She has a Kindle with books on it. And so it's just the example of what happens when kids have access to resources and they have other readers around them. We all have Kindles, right? Both my parents have Kindles. I have a Kindle. So she's around other people who are constantly reading and exposing her not just to words, but also to books, and to be able to dream and imagine and arts and all that other good stuff. So I thought, how nice would it be for her to read with me? So if you saw it, she read one page, I read another. She read one page, I read another. And the funniest thing with that was, this was during COVID. And so, we don't always dress up on COVID real well during most days. And she was with me here at the house, and she went and changed her clothes, put on a dress and her church shoes and her tights, and she came down, did her hair. She was all ready and so super excited to do that video with me that she shamed me. I had to go change my clothes. I said, I got dress up clothes too.
She knows representation and presentation matters.
Yeah,
So
I'm telling you, she came down on point.
That's phenomenal. And the one thing I love about this story is that you truly are stepping outside of just the reading level. You actually have partnered with the city. And when I say you, United Way of Delaware, you as a leader has partnered with the city of Wilmington, who has been providing $90,000 in the city's CARES Act federal funding for stand-up learning pods. Now, this is something that I truly just admire. It's making young children the opportunity to work in a classroom setting with other children that they probably missed this whole time during the pandemic, but also allows the opportunity for parents to work from home or work at their job sites without that extra layer of anxiety if their child is going to catch coronavirus while in the schools or the nonprofit organizations, because these learning pods are at a lot of our organizations in the community as well. So can you tell us a little bit about the stand-up learning pods, what it is, and why did the United Way of Delaware make the decision to partner up with the city to make this happen for our community?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, we've been working on the Learning Pods idea for a while. Again, this is one of those things that, as you said, as schools decided. So, last spring, schools closed pretty promptly. And so parents automatically had to become their kids' teacher. They had to adjust themselves, working in a virtual environment. Now I have to finish up the school year. And as we went into the fall, parents then have to figure out and adjust. If I have to work every day, who's going to make sure that my little one is sitting in front of this Zoom right now? Who's going to make sure that they're helping them with their homework? Who's going to make sure that they're getting the assistance that they need, right, that I can't do? And so learning pods were really popping up across the country. Originally, it'd be two parents or be a parent that decided that they were going to set up, maybe for a group of small kids themselves, maybe their kids included with a few other kids, and then have a place where they are on their Zoom, that they're doing their homework, that they're getting assistance. And then some private pair ones came up, which is, again, places where people with means had access to resources that those that didn't. So, this whole theme and idea says, in some places, we're calling them the learning pods. They may be just calling them day camp still for kids during the school year, but it's really about a structured setting that kids get to go to with the assistance they need to make sure they're ready to learn. and that they're sitting there, they're on their Zoom, they're making sure that they show up every day for attendance, is helping to increase attendance rates, is helping to increase the fact their attentiveness to the class, right? And that they're paying attention. What's the additional assistance that they need to be able to make sure they have the supports? What if they don't understand something? We're providing resources to that. And so partnering with the city was awesome because it allowed for additional resources to make sure that they had the supports they need to do it safely. Now, you just said this, which is schools aren't taking kids because, the environments we're saying aren't safe, but community centers, and that's what they are in most cases, right? Community organizations are saying, we got to do something. We have to lean in. Families need support. And so, I applaud their staff because they're on the front line. They also want to be able to maintain safety, and that, there's a risk to them going into these environments every day as well. We were super excited about the city joining us and being a part. Is not just about their financial resources. We set up a community of practice. So the city will be participating with us on an ongoing basis, hopefully, until we get to the finish line, whatever the finish line looks like, and providing what supports that the community center needs. And just a shout out as one thing. So, it's the neighborhood house, it's the Latin American Community Center, it's Hilltop, Girls Inc., Boys and Girls Clubs, the WISE, the CIT. There are several organizations that are supporting the learning pods that are doing this every day.
And what are some other ways that United Way of Delaware is helping this community during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, so one of the ways that we're doing it is 211 is a part for us. And I just want to be able to say, 211 is here for the community since COVID. We have expanded our hours. We have increased our days. We are now open for 7 days a week to make sure we're available to the community. We have consistently tried to be able to set up and increase our capacity so that we're actually calling people back. Let me tell you, when people are calling and they're in need, if you've ever called someone and you get someone on hold or you get the runaround, that just frustrates people. It frustrates me when I don't get a person on the other line. So we are trying to be really intentional about, we always provided, I would say, great customer service, but we're trying to provide a wow customer service when people are calling us to the best of our ability to connect people to the resources they need, to listen to what they need, and to figure out, right, if it's something we can't do, how can we help them to be able to navigate? So much that we stood up 211 press 4. So if you call 211 and press 4 and you're a parent in the community, we set this line up for you. We set it up so the parents could call so that they also knew, look, we might need tutoring, right? Or people are calling us saying my child has an IEP and they need help with math and we don't know what to be able to do. Or my child needs help with reading. Like, where do we go for services? Maybe, we don't know where some feeding programs are in the state, or, some people might've been calling us because they didn't have the internet or they don't have, the Chromebooks that they need for their kids to be able to learn. But the line is set up so the parents know they are not in this alone, and that we understand that these are challenging times to be able to hold down a family, to be able to work virtually, to be able to help your kids virtually, to be able to figure it out. It is not easy. It is not an easy plight. And so we want to make sure that we're providing another outlet and support that can connect them to community resources.
And it truly is the essence of equity, making sure that all individuals in the state of Delaware have equal access to these resources. And 211 is another way of connecting everyone to those resources. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it is. It's one way, right, that we can level the playing field, right? How do we make sure that, and, in some cases, people are just calling with the most basic needs, particularly during COVID. Our calls have increased over 70%. Which is significantly for us, since COVID. And people are calling just for those basic needs: food, shelter, utilities. There was a lot still around COVID. Where do I go for testing? Someone's positive, they can't stay here. What are my options? And so COVID-related calls are coming into us as well. But, we keep saying that people keep saying that, we figure out how to get out of COVID, and then it's supposed to die down, and then people are saying it's coming back. But, I think, in our experience and the timeframes that we are dealing with it right now is never left. I think I just want to remind people of that too. COVID has never left. And so I don't know what that comeback period is, but I like to see it leave first.
Definitely. As a lot of people have been saying, this is our new normal, to get used to it, because what we experienced prior to 2020, back in 2019 and so on, a lot of people are in belief that we may not return to a world that was once like that. It's going to be very different moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's still left to be seen. I keep saying, as a joke, that my grandkids someday will probably say, "Gosh, you used to go around with no mask." Like maybe mask would just be normal. Like, we're always going to always wear a mask. Who knows what the future holds for us?
That's right. And on the topic of the future, unfortunately, the pandemic has affected a lot of residents and businesses and nonprofit organizations. Funding, financially, have been hit very hard. One thing that United Way of Delaware does do, and has been doing before the pandemic, is providing financial coaching through their Stand By Me program. I also admire the fact that you provide this resource in Spanish too. You have fluent Spanish speaking financial coaches who help our community residents in regards to getting everything lined up in regards to how to manage their finances. Can you talk to us a little bit about Stand By Me, and also help us to better understand if they're providing the resources during the pandemic to help those who might have lost their job, or for those who still have their jobs and can kind of put some savings along the side, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Right.
Talk to us about that.
So Stand By Me, right, is a one-stop financial coaching that we do in partnership with the state. And, you're right. So Stand By Me, pre-COVID, was focused a lot on how do we help people. I kind of call them this broad wealth, but we call it financial empowerment. Some people may call it wealth creation, because it really is about, first of all, we don't tell you what your goals are. You tell us. I want to be able to save for a car. I'm trying to save to buy a house. I just want to clean my credit up. Whatever you're saving for, every coaching, session, we try to get people to start with a budget. So, how do we put it down on paper, and how do we begin to teach you how to budget and plan and save, right, for what it is you're trying to achieve? And so we've been fortunate that, home ownership was still taking place. I looked at how many people still bought automobiles in the last year, how much people were still doing savings and cleaning up their credit. And so there are some people, right, that are still doing that and that are still on track. And maybe some people had to pause it because they became unemployed, or someone in their household did, or they were furloughed, or whatever it is. But what we also start using the coaches for is to say, look, a lot more people have gotten thrown into unemployment, and that COVID has impacted them significantly. And so the coaches now will help people still start with a budget. Even the budget says like zero. Like the budget, 9 out of 10, even if there's no income coming in, you still have expenses you have to pay out, right? So you got to start with a budget, see what it is that it looks like. But there will be working with them to help them to connect to, how do you make payment arrangements with your landlord, your mortgage company, utility company? What can they do to help to connect you maybe to some workforce development strategies that exist? And so the intent of it, in this phase is not just normally it's just to help people manage the expense side. We also recognize we have to make sure, back to being that resource, how do we help to connect them to things that may change their income side of the equation? And how can we be a greater resource? And so those things are going on during the COVID, this time period. And there's a lot more people where we believe that the coaches will have to stick with people over a period of time, right? Back to, you said it earlier, what does normalcy look like? What did my budget look like 8-9 months ago? And what is it going to need to look like tomorrow? And how do I kind of transition from where I am to, where ultimately it needs to be, to at least be stable, to let alone be thinking about financial empowerment itself.
And are these services for free for those individuals who are seeking this kind of help financially?
Great question. The services are free for people in the community. And you can find a coach. Again, you can visit our website, But Stand By Me also has its own website that you can people can visit. And a lot of our great partners, again, right here in our community, are doing coaching at the Latin American Community Center, at West End Neighborhood House. We're now trying to work with Children's and Families First. It's doing that. We just added some coaches like at Stubbs Elementary, at Bancroft, so that there will be coaching available to parents. So the intent too of the coaching is we're trying to come to you, not you come to us. Right. So try to make it more accessible. So the coaches, they may reside in a place. And of course, right now, a lot of the coaching is done virtual, but the intent really is to meet people where they are.
And one of the great things, too, about United Way of Delaware, for many years, they've been serving and providing resources to the underserved population, the underrepresented communities. And during this pandemic, it's really opened up the eyes to so many in regards to racial inequities and the systemic racism. This has been a huge topic throughout the pandemic, but unfortunately, for many, they are saying it's been a pandemic prior to this current COVID-19 pandemic. It just happens to open up the eyes to many people of what's really been happening. Before the cell phone videos have been putting this on social media, this has been happening for years.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about United Way's role in the racial inequities and the systemic racism.
Yeah, great question. So I just want to say this back to this year's, right? It's kind of like what I was saying, like if you just focus on the read by third grade thing, right? So the issue, this is no new issue, right? It's been an issue for years, right? And not just in our local communities, but around the country. Mm-hmm. But sometimes what happens is you got to kind of put it right in front of people to raise their awareness. So I would say United Way as an organization, pretty much since inception, has been fighting for racial equity and social justice in the sense that there have always been disparities, right, between education, income, and health for people within our communities. Again, primarily, if you look at it, brown and Black individuals, those that are in poverty. And so we've been working to try to close that, right? How do you set up programs and services so that more people could actually achieve, right, a different outcome, again, regardless of zip code, because, there's a lot of study that says like 2 babies born on the same day, their life's going to be different. What one's going to get exposed to, the types of camps, the types of summer vacations, the types of resources, sometimes just the sheer food in a house every day, right? All of that stuff really is really important. And so when you think about the work we've been doing there, it's been there, right? And we've been beating on the drum. Just to me, if you just take something around third grade reading that I told you I've been fighting for over 15 years, it is one of those things that says there is an equity and has been an equity problem, right, around this to be able to get people's attention. 5 years ago, we partnered with a group of some amazing partners and said, let's bring our voices together. And so back to that collaboration. So it was organizations like the ACLU, has been a part of it, the Urban League, lots of the YWCA, lots of organizations came together, and they've been working over the last 5 years, they meaning I should say we, on trying to raise attention to some of these issues. But fast forward to George Floyd, the murder on TV, and all of a sudden there's this major, what I would consider groundswell. So if there was a spark before we created, someone just threw oil on it and it has become a fire, and fire in a great way, where so many people have gotten off of the sidelines. So many people said, what can I do to be able to help? So many people have said, beyond just protesting, beyond just marching, beyond just raising my voice, what else can I do to be a part of the change? And so we now have partnered and pulled together this collaboration of people to a much greater scale, that amazing individuals across the state, right? So it's one plan for Delaware, but it's also broken down by county, because you got to have local leadership, right, in order to drive change. From a young voice to an older voice and everything in between, it is a great diversity of people who are coming to the table who said, we want to be able to stand up policies and practices that promote equity in criminal justice, in wealth creation, and education, and in health. And how do we do that? And we also want to tear down, institutional practices that are tied to racism, How do we tie into systemic issues that, again, hold back a group of people? And how do we then work collectively to decide what that change needs to look like? And so I'm just pleased to say that that was part of spark the 21-day racial equity challenge, where we had 8,000 Delawareans participate in the challenge, right, which was a self-reflection around race, racism, and systemic racism. But specifically, right, it really was about an individual journey. It was about you taking the challenge for yourselves. And the intent was to try to expose people, to get people maybe to change their lens. If you've ever been to the eye doctor, is this better? Is this better? Is this better? Is this better? Right? We hopefully it got clearer. Hopefully people got aha moments. Hopefully it's propelling people even more to feel like they need to use their voice around change. And so we've heard lots of those stories from people out of it. So we say mission accomplished on that piece, but the work is hard and it's challenging and it's deep rooted and it's not going to change overnight, but we can't be silent, right? And we can't stop fighting. And, and at the end of the day, we're going to have to figure out how do we best run this race?
And how is this race being ran when it comes to funding the work that the collaborative is doing?
Yeah, so we started a racial equity and social justice fund, and we're using that as an arm of the work. So it's not to the right? So if, you no matter what great strategies you come up with, if you don't have resources to do them, a lot of times I tell people it's just a dream, right? Or it's just a plan, but you can't put it into action. So as we stand up strategies and as we stand up goals that we want to be able to achieve collectively, we're also hoping that we get people's commitment to the fund long term, because it's going to be what fuels the engine that drives the change of the work that we're trying to do.
Yes. And Michelle, in regards to driving that work, if there are other parties who are interested in collaborating, joining this effort, is that possible?
Absolutely. So the one thing we made that when we stood up the racial equity and social justice is this isn't some exclusive club. It is open to everyone. And every newsletter I did, I said, people were interested, just email us at standupde@uwde.org. Again, it's standupde@uwde.org. And people have responding, right? Every week it seems like we get a few more people who say, how do I get involved? How do I get engaged? And we want people from all age groups, from all demographics, to be a part of the work. We believe the work is big enough and complex enough that there's room for everyone. And so sometimes I like to call it a band that says, so it doesn't matter what your instrument is that you play, just come on in. We'll have a place for you to be able to play in this band. But the only, the guideline is we want people to play to the same sheet of music. Right? If we're all playing and we don't have, it's kind of like if we all were not playing to music, we would sound like I don't know what. But the objective is a place for everyone. But we do want to be all marching to the same sheet of music. We want to do that for the state. We want to do that by county, because that's how it's going to amplify our voice. We think that's how it's going to build public will. And that's how it's really going to drive change.
And Michelle, you've truly made so many different strides while being at United Way of Delaware. Is there one community endeavor that you are proud of the most?
Yeah, so, I was thinking about that. So the one I still think that one of the things that I'm proud of that's still standing, that we're still doing, really is getting the Stand By Me off the ground. Stand By Me will be celebrating 10 years come 2021. And, I think there was a vision for it that has just grown much stronger than what anything that we would have had anticipated. And I know that you just said one, but the other one is still read by third grade. Even though we're not there yet, we've been able to get Delaware reading to Delaware. I think we're trying to raise the visibility. And I am determined as I run this race, before I pass this baton off to the next generation, that we're going to get further along and really increase the percentage of our kids that are prepared to read on grade level and position them better to be tomorrow's workforce.
And lastly, Michelle, before we leave, I'm going to leave the virtual platform to you for any parting words. And also, if someone is interested in donating or getting involved with United Way of Delaware, feel free to share that information.
Thank you. I'll start with that first. So if you're interested, first of all, the racial equity work, right, again, is standupde.org. If you're interested in volunteering and giving and being a part of the work, you can visit us at uwde.org. Again, uwde.org. And, my parting words is, look, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here to share with you our journey, share with you some of the things that we're working on, because the reality is, right, I don't want to waste this moment in time. You talked about the racial equity and the social justice piece of it. I think we are at really a crossroad right now for our country. I don't even want to talk about the impact potentially of the election. And I just say that in the sense of, it does not matter if we're a Republican or Democrat, right, or independent. It really is about, how do we bring true unity back to the community? How do we keep the community and kids at the heart of what we do? That so many times we as adults, we get in our own way. And getting in our own way is at the expense of kids, and they're at the expense of adults, those that need us most and those that are counting on us. So, we try to say all the time that we live united, and we don't just, it's just not a tag. It's just not some logo we put up, but we really believe it. And so back to you were saying, like, we're truly striving to be able to say, how do we become a more united community? So it truly is a place that we all want to live, work, and play in.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Michelle, for your time. It's been an honor to have you here virtually on In Focus.
Well, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for watching this episode of In Focus. It's been an honor to have Michelle Taylor, the president and CEO of United Way, on In Focus. To watch future shows of In Focus, be sure to follow us on WITN 22's Facebook page by following at WITN22 Wilm. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at WITN Channel 22. I've been your host, Yesenia Taveras. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.
Incredible You by Dr. Wayne W. Dyer. 10 ways to let your greatness shine through.